Horror is my favorite genre. I enjoy the idea of something terrifying happening, and I love the feeling of being scared. I love watching horror movies, but even more, I love playing horror games. But let me first define the types of horror games before explaining why I think action survival horror is the best. I'd like to think of this as three categories. At first, you have your action survival horror, which is what I will talk about in this video. This includes your Resident Evil, your Evil Within, your Alan Wake, and your Dead Space. These games normally consist of you managing ammo and healing and taking on more waves of zombies. You can also argue that these are more action games than horror games, but we'll get back into that. Next, you have your defenseless horror, or I guess I'll say more traditional horror. This would be your Alien Isolation, your Five Nights at Freddy's, and your Amnesia. There is no fighting back in this game, though you do have lines of defense, but it isn't just as simple as using a gun. Lastly, I'd like to call them outliers since they don't really fit into anything else. So this can be Fear of Hunger, Layers of Fear, and World of Horror. These games are either psychological horror games where there's not really a threat and more of an experience, or games that just aren't traditionally like 3D or 2D. Now that I've gone over the three different types of horror games, I'm here to tell you exactly why survival horror is the best of the three. Bam! You've just been jump scared. In any other game, you would now be losing your shit. Because what could you do? Now you gotta run away. Look at that thing. The thing looks semi-terrifying. Or you could just, Survival horror treads the line between action and horror perfectly. You will still be scared of whatever is coming at you or whatever is thrown at you, but now you have to deal with it yourself. Especially since this entire time you have to be managing your ammo, your healing, and any other resource you need to keep track of. It makes it hard and makes you come up with split-second decisions just to, keep yourself alive. This is the main reason why I prefer this over any other type of horror. Compared to Amnesia or games that kind of play themselves, once you hear a monster coming, all you have to do is hide in the appropriate location and then it just passes. Compared to a survival horror game where there are many factors going into a fight. Do you have enough ammo to deal with that enemy, or are you going to have to search around? Do you know where to go, or are you going to have to blast your way through? There are many levels of thinking involved, meaning you have to adapt fast or else you are probably going to die. These games also change the way that you get scared. While Amnesia, you may feel the fear of a creepy hallway and wondering what could be over there while you're solving puzzles and stuff. In games like Dead Space, it's the intense moment of fighting off aliens while dangling from a rope as they all move in closer. These intense moments call for you to do the best you can in new scenarios. These games love throwing as many unique scenarios or arenas as possible to keep you engaged and growing. I love games that take skill, and survival horror allows the player to get better while also getting upgrades. Most, if not all, horror games have some sort of upgrade system that boosts the game mechanics or their guns. Allowing the player to feel like they go from just some normal guy who is scared of everything to a badass who can slaughter hordes of monsters with ease is one of the biggest appeals of the genre. I'm going to use that to transition into the many likable characters there are. Going along with the fantastic gameplay is well-written main characters who are easy to get attached to. Going through life or death scenarios with them really forms a bond, especially when they give out hard-ass one-liners.
Where's everyone going? Bingo?
That one's a personal favorite, but how about I show you another one?
The Makers? You mean me? But Strauss said we could destroy the marker.
Not if we can shoot you first.
God damn it, I trusted you. Fuck you. And fuck the marker.
Besides the main characters just being like funny or really cool, they also go through a lot of horrific shit. Like, have you ever seen this? Going through horrific stuff is some of the most memorable things that can happen in a game. It makes you root for your character and it makes it so that you really don't want to watch them die. I don't know if I brought it up, but there are really some gruesome death animations. I'll play a couple. Survival horror games make a ton of gruesome and mess up things happen to you. No matter how much you upgrade yourself or get better at the game, never forget you are still playing a horror game. And this gets even worse, especially when you add in enemies that just don't die from simple gunshots.
Jesus Christ!
This type of enemy, also known as the stalker type of enemy, is an enemy in one of these games that does not die. You cannot kill it. No matter how much ammo you spend shooting at it, no matter what you try to do, they will not die and they will always pursue you. Sometimes you can stun them if you just, shoot them enough, but some of them will instantly kill you upon touching you, and it requires you to either sneak around or run around until you can get out. These are my favorite kind of enemy in any game, period. They each have their own call, whether that's the tyrant's footsteps in the background or a really, really creepy lullaby that plays with some creepy music in the back too. These enemies remind you of just how powerless you are, and I really like that. Survival horror, like I said earlier, goes between the line of action and horror, and sometimes it will take turns going between the two. But that's just what makes it so good. It's not repetitive enough to be an action game, but it's not just a straight horror game. Now, I think it is important to note that not every game can bridge this gap correctly, and sometimes you get quote-unquote horror games that really aren't that scary at all. The best example I could show you is Resident Evil 6. All right. Pause. This so-called survival horror game, within the span of like less than a minute, you threw a zombie over your shoulder, roundhouse kicked another, and there's like funk music, pop music playing. It's like, come on, this is like over the line, right? And at this point, you're no longer even scary. It also just means it's like no longer enjoyable. Because come on, what's the point then if you're just playing an action game at that point? I love all three types of horror games, but survival horror always stuck with me as the best. Before closing this video, I think I should also show just how accessible the series is. There is a type for everyone, whether you like your traditional zombies, your sci-fi, your psychological games, your storytelling. It just goes on, and there will always be one that fits your interests. Well, that's all I have today, and I guess I'll see you in the next one.